kill you.
And welcome back to Zaku Talk. I am your host, Patrick Scale. This season, G versus Wing, so that means my co-host is the steamy...
Bob, scary voiceover artist. It's hot in here.
He's converting from a liquid to a gas. It is very unfortunate. We'll have to get through this one quickly before he's gone.
And I'm solid again. I am Bob Scary, voiceover artist.
They've turned down the temperature. That's wonderful. And, of course, on the audio boards is Lev Van Rensselaer. As promised, this week, episode 16 of both G Gundam and Gundam Wing. But before we begin on that, Bob, how's your week been going?
Well, my week has been pretty okay. A good thing happened to me the other day. In fact, it happened while you and I were talking, as we do weekly before we get this show going. So for those not in the know, when one is an actor, one has trouble with maintaining a decent amount of time and money. You generally have to sacrifice one for the other. I've been sacrificing the money, but I've been getting work in and out. I'm actually going to be doing some editing work for a dear friend of mine. She goes by the handle Milady Saito on Twitch, and I'm helping her with some of her channel work. So by the time you hear this, hopefully you'll see a few really neat clips of the shows that I'm on her channel. But besides that being a minor paid gig on the side, I have my unemployment kicked back in. So I don't have to be fretting my existence on the side of a road in nowhere, USA.
All right. That sounds like all good news over there. Over here, you've heard me talk about my animation project before, dear listeners. We have inked our actress for that, our lead. I had always hoped we'd be able to get her. I assumed we would. We've worked together before. She seemed to enjoy it, but this project's a bit odd. And the quarantine is happening, so you never know what they may say, but it worked out great. We've had our introductory chat about it and walked her through all of the materials that we presented, so been good progress on that. Yes, Bob?
Have I worked with this actress before?
No, you have not. She's over here.
Okay.
With me, because there's some live action components that we're going to do either on a set or in a studio with these Onyx panels pumping in the Unreal Engine I've been talking about. So we've been doing that, and nothing else terribly exciting beyond that. Just a lot of writing and prep work for other projects somewhere. All right, so Bob, give us a quick old summary on... Oh, Jesus. on G Gundam episode 16.
Well, while Jesus doesn't really show up in this show, the God Gundam and the Devil Gundam will. So, I mean, we'll work with it.
G Gundam doesn't have like a son of G Gundam, because Godzilla does.
I mean, I hope for that day to happen sometime in the next decade or two, because by golly, G Gundam and the future century deserve it. But I digress. Episode 16, Ultimate Power and Evil, Rise of the Devil Gundam, or in Japanese, Saikyo Sayaku, Devil Gundam Genwaru. An earthquake shakes Shinjuku, and all the members of the Shuffle Alliance, along with their crews, are trapped underground. Rain stumbles upon the Devil Gundam, which is absorbing its Death Army mobile suits. She is attacked by one of the Death Army suits, but is saved by a masked man. Master Asia finds Rain and attacks her, but he is stopped by Domon and the others. Domon confronts Master Asia, but Master Asia says he is too late and that the Devil Gundam is ready to be revived. Above ground again, the new members of the Shuffle Alliance are easily defeated by Master Asia, except Domon. Master Asia is about to finish off Domon, but he is stopped by a stealthed Gundam fighter piloted by Schwarzbruder, representing Yoke Germany. He fights on par with Master Asia and gives Domon time to attack the Devil Gundam. Activating his super mode, he cannot bring himself to attack the cockpit and instead aims towards the base. The Devil Gundam absorbs all his Shining Finger's energy, fully reviving. Master Asia and the Devil Gundam then disappear,
All right, well put there. Over here in the After Colony timeline, we have the sorrowful battle, Kanashiki Kessen. And now Kessen I recognize from our title last week when it was combined with Basho to make Battleground. But here it seems to be just straight battle. And Kanashiki, I guess, is like meant much sorrow, something like that.
I believe that is the case. As a sort of diversion from that, I will say that at the time of recording, we are in the middle of Spoopmas month, aka October. And just for those of you out there who might be interested in a nice horror anime to watch at some point, I highly recommend Shiki. Shiki is a wonderful story. It lasts about 26 episodes and is similar in a way to Salem's Lot if you're a fan of Stephen King. In any case, Kanashiki, I was just quickly trying to pull up. And that's weird. Okay. All right. One of these is trying to suggest it means anvil. So I'm going to go ahead and dismiss that one.
Okay.
Yep. Nope. It's trying to tell me anvil.
All right, the anvil battle. I
hell?
gotcha. There's a metaphor there we're missing.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's okay. So in this episode, Hiro and Troa arrive at the Berkeley base in Antarctica, where Hiro returns to his rebuilt Gundam, but Hiro decides to use Troa's Gundam Heavy Arms instead for the duel with Zex. That is until Relina arrives to interrupt the battle as it is going on. Noin, during this, reveals to Relina that Zex is her brother, Miliardo Peacecraft. And when the Oz carriers arrive to arrest him, Zex decides to surrender in order to allow Relina to escape with Noin, while Troa escapes with Hiro. All right, Babbo. So for G Gundam this week, I forgot about Ninja Guy. I actually kind of like him. If I remember correctly. I don't remember exactly what he's going to do in this series, but I thought was a cool guy whenever I watched it way back when. You know he's a ninja because not just only the way he looks, which isn't very ninja-like because it's very colorful, but like he has predator invisibility, so like that's really a good sign that probably he's got ninja powers. But also his Gundam has the same like camouflage technology. The Gundam I've always liked, his Gundam I always liked, I just didn't like how it looked, but I like all the powers it has and how it fights. I just wish it were a little more interesting. I also wish his color scheme were the color scheme of the Dark Gundam. The Dark Gundam a little too colorful for my tastes. But those are very superficial notes. Overall, a fine episode. I kind of like this sort of race to stop the Devil Gundam from hatching, even though we don't spend as much time as I'd like on it. I also like kind of pairing up these people in like these odd kind of groupings and see how they interact. I think that's a good way to introduce us again to these characters because we see how Domon interacts with them. So now it's good to see how they interact amongst each other. And so you get sort of some revelations that way. Yeah, overall, not really much to discuss any particulars on my note. Nothing.
That's because it's a me episode. This is where all my tokusatsu bullshit comes into play.
Yeah, so I don't have sort of much that stands out to me. So why don't you kind of walk us through kind of what genre things are coming up and what sort of its functions and goals are in doing them?
Certainly. Well, besides the fact that you definitely picked up on the field trip aspect, which is something that we see in a lot of these 5-man band setups. What I think was interesting to me among all these was being able to start having our number 2 and number 3 in the party. In our 5-man band or Sentai 5-man team, we have both Chibity and George filling in the number 2 and number 3, not heavily defined, but if you want to do in terms of the ranking, you could assume that the ranking would be that Chibity is the number 2 and that George is the number 3. Not to say that they are in terms of power level, but just ranking in command. I say this because you have your got your Diamond in the Rough character out of Chibity, and you have your Knightley character out of George. These are common fill-ins for a blue and yellow either way, if you were to have Domon as your red. Again, I'm using these concepts of Sentai color theory that are not wholly set in their way, but does have a lot of commonality that shows up. So if you were to watch any of these Sentai or even Power Rangers, you may see this. So it was nice to see the two of them going head to head in a sort of faux duel, but they are trying to speak their piece as they're fretting about what to do. They are in way over their heads as neophytes compared to the grand fighters that were the original Shuffle Alliance, at least the originals that we know. I also want to comment on Schwarzbruder here, Neo Germany's fighter. He has already shown himself to be very much in this same Sentai vibe, to be in the same vein as how would I put it? He is both a mentor and a sixth. I'm sorry?
A Green Ranger?
That is how most Americans would term it, yeah.
Yeah.
You're a Green Ranger in the States, which, again, fun fact, when we got our Tommy, the Green Ranger, here in the States, that was the first time a sixth Ranger was ever put into play in Sentai.
In Japan?
Canonically, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So that was the first time that was ever a thing. And honestly, I think that they just put Jason David Frank, the guy who plays Tommy, in that slot because he was supposed to be, and this is for my Toku weebs out there, he was supposed to be the American face for Metalder, who was like a offshoot tertiary iteration of Keykider from way back in the 60s and 70s. It was an offshoot of that and would eventually be incorporated into VR Troopers here in the States. When that show didn't go through after the pilot initially, okay. I guess they just gave Jason David Frank the opportunity to be this character, which would let him be a pseudo lead, which would eventually lead to him being a lead and have it all go to his head and make that head very large and helmety and show through his actions with his fans and foes alike.
I'm confused. Did that happen in Power Rangers?
I'm calling Tommy Jason David Frank a dick.
Okay, so he was in Power Rangers and it gave him an inflated ego, and then in real life he became an asshole.
Oh, okay. So we're going to take I'm going to save this for my nerd corner now because this is a whole segment.
Yeah, I have no idea what anything you just said.
I'm going to go through the trials and tribulations of admiring Jason David Frank for my nerd corner today.
That sounds fine to me then. Mm-hmm.
But pulling it back, the point is that Neo Germany's fighter has already shown himself to be comparable in capability to Master Asia. So we know that he's worth learning from, and we know that he is going to show up more often as they've tried to present him as such. So for the sake of you at home, yeah, we're going to see him more than just this one instance. It would be weird otherwise. But he is going to be assisting these individuals in developing their capacity to work as individuals as well as a team. You had asked me a week or two ago, I believe, about the sword. I think it was just last week.
Yes.
Okay. As I said before, Domon is going to receive that sword. He's going to receive that sword from Neo Germany's fighter, and that's going to help him in his training over time. It should become more prominent, but I don't recall the sword's prominence being incredibly on top of things. It's not like a super upgrade, but it is going to be a sort of focus for Domon to develop his skills.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And then lastly, just in terms of story beats, they had to do what they did at the end of this episode to present a few points that we can now confirm to ourselves. One, we have to make these people who just received some sort of power that they don't even feel properly yet be weak. They cannot win on the first iteration of this fight. Two, we have to see that the Devil Gundam is nothing to snuff at, that this is a catastrophic event that is going to be occurring over the rest of the series. they cannot win and get him in the middle of his or its first evolution. And thirdly, we have to see that Domon, for all his presented hardness from episode 1 forward, it is not resolved yet. There are a lot of emotions that he has not been able to properly come to acknowledge and handle. So we get to see that in the way that he can't handle Master Asia. He can't take down the Devil Gundam because he sees Kyoji there on the Devil Gundam's shoulder and does not see why he has to fight like a normal person should. He does not have that resolution in himself to take down this man he calls brother.
Yeah, and there's also an element early on in the episode where Rain's like, hey, Domo, why don't you be the leader here? They're all fighting amongst each other. And he's just like, I can't do that. And I think that, now that he's in this position, we have to reestablish that he's not ready for it yet, so he has somewhere to go in regards to this alliance.
Absolutely. That's absolutely the way to look at this. This is the reluctant team situation. It does not happen often, at least in Toei's series, but in general 5-man band shows, you will occasionally step on this situation where the person who is meant to lead is reluctant due to either emotional stagnation or an inability to feel that they have the skills necessary compared to the others that they are around. And considering the devastated landscape that they are around and all the turmoil that Domon's dealt with over the past few days, it's no surprise that he is not ready to claim the role of leader yet. It
seems an odd choice to me that a show that's ostensibly focused on this one-on-one tournament kind of structure wants to go in a Sentai direction. Do you find later on in the series that there's some tension with that, or do they just sort of like take little detours to do this tournament stuff?
Well, I'm glad that you say it that way because they are all trained to be individuals, and that is mostly the reason why they have that difficulty of acknowledging each other as associates, as allies. It's easy to just say, hey, you did good out there, and hey, I need a little help. But that's the extent of their capability to handling things because they're all taught to be, I must be number one. And because of that, they can't acknowledge that any of them needs help from another person in terms of their skills. If they do, that is to show weakness. That is to show an inability to press forward as their own self. And I think that will be established more as we progress towards the middle portion of the series. So I know that there is a line, at least in the sub that I saw, I don't know if they say it on your side, where George Desand states that he will abstain from the Gundam fight until he is aided in the defeat of the Devil Gundam. And I don't know exactly how much that holds true from this point forward. If I recall correctly, there are still going to be fights in between, but I don't know how many of them are going to be the same level of Gundam fight that we've seen in the first 12 episodes.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So that's as much as I can say on that before we start getting into too far territory.
There was a translation thing I wanted to ask you about because it didn't sort of come off it felt odd when he said it, when Domon says it in English. But like everybody can't fight this Gundam, and Germany guy is fighting Master Asia, and everybody's trying to get him to attack his brother, and he doesn't know if he can do it. And then like he remembers like, oh yeah, you killed my parents, you hurt my parents, and blah, blah, blah. But he kept saying, like, he kept repeating like this guy, this guy, this guy. Is it a more interesting or poetic way of saying it in Japan over and over again? Because it doesn't sort of work in English.
Well, I will say that I wasn't wholly focused on the way he worded it there. I believe that they do keep it that way because he's trying to separate his idea of this man is my brother and this man is the reason why everything has gone to hell. So I think the intent is trying to separate his emotions from Kyoji before coming and realizing that he can see him on the shoulder. If he was inside the Devil Gundam, probably wouldn't care because he could separate it by looking at this monstrosity. By sitting on the side or the shoulder or whatever of the monster, he is acting as a sort of shield from the efforts of his brother.
Okay. Then, probably an actor delivery issue then, not helping it sing. So I could believe that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's sort of... I don't really have a lot to talk about this episode. It seems very...
It's
obvious.
A very cut and dry episode.
Yeah,
and unless you're looking for the minutia like I was, then...
Yeah, it knows what it wants to do. It's sort of getting us to shift to a new... or finishing this transition to a new stage of the show. And I don't know, everything was kind of easy to follow. Although I guess... like the Devil Gundam makes the robots to like buy time and then eats them again for energy.
Okay, yes. So to be clear, the self-replication aspect to lead to its evolution is it basically sends drones out to be able to aid in the corruption of all these other humans, and then while being inside the Death Army suits, that human life energy that is being encased in the DG cells becomes the food that allows for it to sustain and regenerate.
The robots corrupt the people, or they trick them into the pods?
It's infect the people with the DG cells. In this case, Master Asia put them into pods so that way they could gestate and become full Devil Gundam Death Army suit people, right? Those zombies that we keep seeing.
Okay, yep. Mm-hmm.
And once they've been gestated enough and they are piloting those Devil Army suits, Death Army suits, that's when they can act as a auxiliary force until they need to return back to the main body and become part of the Devil Gundam once more. Because again, all those suits are just aspects of this creature, because that's what it's seeming more like now. It is no longer just a robot. It's no longer just a suit. It is a creature. They even talk about its insect-like metamorphosis. And when you tack on the idea of what Gundam tried to do with these suits, which is to make them look more human and more humanoid, you end up having this sort of body horror when you look at the Devil Gundam over the course of its several transformations, because the underside of the main body is a Gundam head.
Yes.
And then that thing is attached to whatever its next iteration is. So
yes.
We're seeing this as like this terrifying, I don't want to say cosmic horror, but it is in effect exactly that. It is a creature attached to a machine.
Yes, and then Domon attacks it. His victory in this episode is him finding the strength to fight against his brother. It obviously doesn't go according to plan because we're still very early on in the show. And then the bad guys have to kind of escape and run away to their next plan.
I don't know if they translated it well for you then, or the delivery was bad on your side, because what happens is he tries to pump himself up.
Yeah.
I mean, you see this in war movies or whatever, where somebody tries to like rely on their primal instinct to just get angry and press forward.
Yeah.
He does that.
Yes.
He sees Kyoji on the suit's side and is able to make that anime martial artist eye contact from several hundred yards away.
Yeah.
Right. On seeing his brother's face, which is almost emotionless, maybe even sorrowful, he diverts what should be his major attack from where it's supposed to go, the head and cockpit, and aimed downward. And that would just be a miss, but it's not just a miss. Because he hits that shell before it cracks open, it allows whatever is inside to absorb all that energy he built up from that emotion system that lets him do the shining finger and the super mode and everything. For those who've watched Dragon Ball Z, there's that episode in the World Tournament or Majin Buu Saga where apparently Goku, whenever he was charging, was fighting against a creature that ate that light and that energy from him. It's just like a force pull. It's a consumption of that energy, and that's what allowed the Devil Gundam to actually be able to crack out on time.
Ah, I see. Well, so what they say is that Domon's attack gave it the energy it needed to finish doing whatever it was doing. But
Yes.
I guess I didn't know, or it didn't come across to me that he had held back his attack and had aimed it down, nor did I know that it was bad for him to attack anywhere else until they had said that after the fact.
Well, yeah, and I agree. They said it after the fact on my side too, but the intent is just like we see inside the fights, attacking the head stops things and attacking the cockpit is a kill shot. He was aiming for that area, sees Kyoji, and then in an attempt to pivot at the last moment, hoped to just strike the main body and maybe cause a malfunction. Something to that effect. He was trying to go for a non-lethal hit when he saw Kyoji on the shoulder.
Being that it doesn't look or act at all like a regular Gundam, I have no reason to think, well, that the head is necessarily would kill it because it seems to have a few heads. And two, Kyoji's not even in the cockpit, so I don't know how helpful attacking the cockpit is doing since it's activating anyway.
Isn't that interesting? It's almost like that's something we'll have to think about as we go on in the series.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a story there. But like for me, it's like, I don't know, like I can't sort of prescribe the usual rules. So until I was told that hitting there was bad, I didn't know it was a mistake, and I didn't know it was Domon, pulling back on his attempt at a victory. I just thought his attempt didn't go that well. But I can see now that it still works. Whatever path they chose, either way, kind of gets us to where we want to go for our sort of Act 2-ish, or now that we're sort of in the real throes of Act 2, because I actually think it would begin when he meets with Master
this is
Asia.
around where Act 2 truly begins.
Yeah,
unless we look at it as a 5-act structure. Even still.
I don't know what 5. Yeah. So like in a 3-act structure, you get to Act 2, which I imagine happens when he meets Master Asia, but you spend some time being like, what are the rules? What's going on? We don't know what's happening. And so, like, as you're getting oriented to the special world, leaving behind the world of the tournament and going to the world of the Dark Gundam, this is where we, Domon, but also, besides us two, these Shuffle Alliance characters now get to know all these rules and figure out what's happening and reset the party lines. So you're like, oh no, are these guys our enemies? And now you do. So, yeah.
So I will say to this that typically in these 50-some-odd episode series, at least on the tokusatsu side that I'm used to, it may or may not be the case with Gundam. It does seem to follow more to a 5-act structure than a 3. Not that you can't apply it, but I would say that our first act ended around the time that we were told to go to Shinjuku. That would be the end of Act 1, because there's this transitional moment here that is Act 2, which is this past 4 or so episodes. It's a mini act, and I would say that it continues into episode 17 forward, that we have this Act 2 section. By the time we get to the Guyana Highlands, I would say that's our Act 3. Then we're going to get to the semifinal final setup. That's Act 4. And then the last handful of episodes is going to be Act 5.
Yes.
That is how I would see it, and I'm going to see if that's how you feel by the time we get to that point.
Well, yes, for those of you listening at home or that are writers or coming here to kind of learn how to kind of craft a story, whether you choose 2, 3, 4, or 5 acts, you could even do 7, I've seen. It truly doesn't matter. They're all pretty much the exact same kind of curvy line on a sheet of paper that you're just adding more segments to. Coming from features, I sort of come from a 3-act world. 5-act is more of like an hour-long TV show type of thing, so it doesn't come up very often in America. So, but it's really just whatever you can kind of get comfortable with based on Bob's outlining of what he just described to me. I could see it in there, but you could, I don't know, you could just sort of put your lines wherever you want to in the story. All those beats are going to get hit. So, no, you just season to flavor how many acts you want.
Do we want to start talking about the wing now?
Yeah, I think that's good here. So, over here in Gundam Wing, we actually do get to our end of our first act here. This is sort of the last episode of what I call, necessary exposition. It's a lot more interesting since our inciting incident on episode 7, where Hero accidentally kills Noventa and the other Alliance pacifists. But still, we're very expositional in a lot of places. We're really setting things up. We're just kind of planting seeds for us to get into the real meat coming afterwards. But here's a very fitting finale to our act.
I'm almost willing to say that based on the way you had talked about those first 7 episodes back when we started this podcast, that it feels more like a prologue.
Yeah, that's fine too. I would take that.
Because you could have started about episode 6 or 7 and you would still have the breadth of this entire story. You wouldn't have as much of this setup. And I think that, again, I've been listening to our episodes from some weeks back. And it's funny. I feel like some of the issues that you had at the time with your show with Wing was that we had too much acknowledgement that these 5 kids are supposed to be our presumed protagonists. If you start in episode 6 or 7, I think you cut a lot of that out and you can actually get more of the story that you were looking for, albeit you wouldn't have as much of the Relina development, and you could cut Dr. J altogether because he wasn't even in the series, the manga series, as you told me.
Well, he's not. Yeah, he's not in those parts yet. Yeah, the manga sort of does the manga does a lot of things well, and sort of cuts out a lot of unnecessary things, but they do really sort of give Relina the shaft in it, which is unfortunate because they sort of miss kind of the importance she can bring to the story overall. So, yeah, I probably wouldn't want to cut a lot of those first 5 episodes. I would just really truncate them. I would really just push them in together.
Like turn those into like 1 or 2 episodes, then just go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 6 as your episode 3, 7, now we start.
Yeah, there's a lot I would skip. I would do that. That would be interesting to me. So, yes. And this is an episode for you, Bob, and other voice actors out there. If you wanted to listen to Zex's English voice actor here and compare it to episode 1, like not only is it a 180 in kind of what he's doing with the character, but like he's way better at it. Like this guy is on his game and sort of bringing a surprising amount of... maybe that's not even, this isn't the right word, subtlety, but like there's like an effortlessness to it this time where he's not trying so hard, but it still feels very real, believable. And he had like, they meet out in the snow and like they want it, like Hero doesn't really want to talk to him that much or shake hands or anything. And Zex is like, yeah, it's fine. But like, I don't know, like this delivery is just it's sort of impressive compared to where it began. And sort of the effort he puts into it, and then their conversation in the hallway, like they're both, and it's making Hero's voice actor sound a lot better too. Like everybody's sort of bringing it now as we get here, and so I'm sort of that was kind of surprising me. Like, oh yeah, I'm on board with this Zex actor. This guy's no joke.
But I'm trying to look at the voice actor who had done the voice for Zex, and the actor's name is Brian Drummond, and I just wanted to get a peek of where he's gone since.
Yeah.
And wow, he is prolific. I would not be surprised if because of Zex, he got all this work. It looks like he did have a few credits before that. He was in the original Mobile Suit Gundam.
Yes, he was. He plays a lot of bit parts in there.
Flanagan Boone and Lieutenant Dorota.
Yeah, they're not big characters, but like it's always fun to like, Zex has been in the background.
No.
What is it?
Okay. So I don't know if you ever saw this, but I know that when I was a kid, they would play it over and over on like Fox Family before it became ABC Family, and now
Freeform,
whatever the hell they call it now.
Freeform, because they were afraid that they wanted the tween audience, but if they called their show Family, that it would drive teens away.
Yeah, but regardless, Jingle Bell Rock, a TV short from 1995,
Not to be confused with Jingle All the Way, starring Sinbad and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes, I would never, because Jingle Bell Rock is sadly better than Jingle All the Way. And
I don't know what Jingle Bell Rock is.
buy those words.
I've never heard of it.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But he was in that. He was in so many different things. Escaflowne, Mummies Alive.
Yes, he was in Escaflowne. I remember that. Mm-hmm.
He was in Monkey Magic, apparently. Sonic Underground as Knuckles. Holy hell!
As Knuckles.
This is surprising.
That'd be an interesting take.
Wow, I'm sorry. I had to, as a voice actor, make sure that I acknowledged the man. He played Jetstorm in Beast Machines.
Oh, Duo's in that. No, that's Beast Wars. No. What is
so Beast Machines is the sequel series that we had as a states only.
Yeah. The Duo voice actor is in Beast Wars. I didn't know there was a Beast Machines.
Yeah, Beast Machine. It's kind of a janky secondary series, and I would not hold to it. But he was also in the American Card Captors.
Okay.
And a lot of other stuff. It's just I'm sorry, I don't mean to have us divert too far, but I appreciate this.
Duo plays the rat in the Beast Wars show.
No.
Yeah.
No. So Duo Maxwell is freaking Rat Trap?
So that's what it told them when I watched Gundam Wing. I was like, oh shit, it's the rat guy. They're like, oh, I'm on board now.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So he's also apparently the Canadian version of Vegeta.
But the Canadian broadcast had its own dub.
Apparently from 1996 to 2003. This is before they got Christopher Sabat on Vegeta, is what I would assume, because he's also Yajirobe and Baba.
Oh, okay, never mind then. Okay.
Yeah. He's also in Inuyasha. He's in Gundam Seed.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He's in a lot. So just for all of you out there, know that when people are voice actors, they can have prolific work if they really put themselves to it and commit to doing good character voices, and even more than the voices, be good actors.
Yes, and non-voice actors out there, I would say that his performance in this episode, I probably wouldn't have noticed if I weren't comparing it to his first couple episodes. So it can be the good voice acting performances, especially I don't know, they can be easy to overlook. And sometimes you might hear a subtle performance and think they're not trying, but there can actually be a lot in there. You just can't rely on the animation to guide you in it like you could in live action.
Absolutely. But sorry for that detour. Yeah, I do think that the way that Zex played out in this episode was very strong in terms of getting us to that point where we now can see Zex, I think, in the same way as the people within the show, as opposed to just trusting what people were trying to tell us of him. We can see it now.
Yes, and go on.
I was just going to say in his motivations and everything else. And there's enough complexity to his choices and his actions that I feel make the character feel more human now than he might have been in episode 2 or 3. And I would be willing to venture more human than many of the other characters up to this point.
Yeah, the character depictions in here are surprisingly formalist for a mainstream 90s anime. And so like you do get these very complex layers, and there are a lot of ways we can interpret why he's fighting this fight. This time around, and even my own interpretations of it have changed over the years. And so like this time I'm sort of seeing like his like inner Wu Fei is kind of coming out here, his need to have opponents. And Tro is sort of on board with that too in his debate with Noin, where he's like, we're warriors. If we don't fight, we don't have anyone to fight. What are we doing? And Noin's like, but we could have something to protect. Maybe that's more important. And this is sort of where the fate of Zex is going to lie, hanging in the balance between these two. And if you're doing a show about kind of the nature of conflict, having that be your debate rather than just like, hey, is war bad, is a little more interesting, and let your characters kind of come at it from an interesting perspective and be good and bad and in between, and still have us kind of root for them to achieve their outcomes.
Well, I'll also note that at least in the subtitles, I don't know if they use it in your dub, Zex makes a comment at one point about his aesthetic of war
Yes.
and how he looks at it as a way for warriors to communicate and the like. And that felt to me very much like what I had been saying an episode or two ago about the difference between these two shows. To hear that come from Zex's mentality on how he acts in this war and how he is effectively a rebel within what is already a rebel act against the Alliance is incredibly well stated to allow us to have more than just, well, my ideology says that you're the asshole. Well, my ideology says you're the asshole. No, it's we are going to communicate through our actions here on the field, and our skill is going to be backed by our desire.
Yes, this is this notion he's sort of learning from Oz and kind of at this point kind of lamenting learning it from Oz, considering how Hiro and Troa are approaching battles more survivalistically, where Treize is sort of teaching that aesthetic of the battle and what makes battles sort of important for the human race and what kind of it proves about those who fight them. And it's what he and Noin sort of subscribe to and what Un is kind of missing. Un and those two guys that Zex had to kill, a few episodes ago sort of missed the whole point on. And now he and Noin and Treize and these 5 Gundam pods are going to have to examine just even that notion of battlefield aesthetics, as the show kind of really starts digging in on everything it's set up from here.
Yeah. No, I am truly excited to see what happens in the next episode, because they left us on that. Is he going to live, or is he going for a kamikaze mission against these 30 different troops to save his younger sister, who, by the way, I think we've gotten through enough of the earlier part stuff now that I can say this. Why would Relina, one, try to have her butler fly this jet into the middle of the Antarctic? 2, how is it moving at that slowest speed and have her be able to have these conversations with them? And 3, how is it that she and Noin are having this conversation where they both chastise each other and then acknowledge each other, where she learns way too much, way too quickly, and just acknowledges, oh, okay, yeah, Zex is my brother, cool. That's very expositional. If there are 2 reasons why most people hate Relina, 1 is probably those first handful of episodes, and 2 is this. And it's sort of her last kind of black mark moment. It's actually excised from the manga completely. Wow. Bob, bad case of the 90s. I don't think it's a great moment. I think there are better ways to have Relina learn this information and to have her process it more. They're cramming it in here with all this other stuff that they have to do, rather unfortunately. They're really just doing it to set up things later on. The butler is just sort of this all-purpose Swiss Army butler who can hack and fly which
planes.
I do love. I'm not going to lie. Having an Alfred here is pretty nice.
So he does it there. He's less interesting than both those other butlers. He does a little bit from here on out, but not really that much. As Relina goes into her kind of next phase of her arc and what she's going to set up from here on out based on this information she gained here, which is a lot more interesting than the gaining of the information. I don't understand why they had to have this line of the battle between Zex and Hiro going on for 3 hours. There's no way it went on for 3 hours. It doesn't make any sense. You can't, the mobile suits can't function that long. The pilots can't physically function that long, especially Zex in that mobile suit that's no good with all the G-forces it's exhibiting. So, Bob, if you find fault with that, I don't blame you. It annoys me too. It is a bit ridiculous.
I think the thing that just bothers me about it is that we have this person who, up to this point, has been fairly realistic in the way that she does things, like that whole spin thing I told you last episode where she's reading the letter. Felt very much like a 15-year-old girl. But then this happens where it's like, what? The man, this boy that I like, and this man who I think is an asshole. That asshole's my brother. And wait, is the guy that I like being the asshole? That feels like that should be more prevalent here than just, yeah, okay. Yeah. Nothing faces me anymore. I watched my dad die.
Yeah, and there's also sort of like she comes in liking Zex and then immediately hates Zex and then immediately likes him. It's too much. Yeah. And she's doing, but like here's what essentially they're trying to set up. One, she has to find out this information. Two, she has to accept it and take it well. Three, she has to show that she's ready to lead the Peacecraft people. Four, Zex has to see it. So like it's, and this is a show where they had so much stuff that they couldn't fit into the 50 episodes, 49 episodes technically, that they had to cut it out and make all these side mangas and prequel mangas and then a movie at the end of it because there was way too much. So I'm not surprised that things like this, too much information, they already had to cut a bunch out. The stuff they couldn't cut out, they just decided to smash together in odd moments like this and a few other parts throughout the show that we'll just have to accept and move past and say, missed opportunity, better luck next time.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I can acknowledge that there is a lot of complexity that they're trying to do with this story at this moment. I just feel like with all the time that they took in the first handful of episodes to really establish these characters for us, they probably could have pulled back on a few pieces to give us the time that we needed for maybe half of this episode to be the plain conversations, as opposed to the 3 or so minutes that ends up occurring.
Yeah, as you know from earlier in the episode, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. I think there's a lot of dead time we can kind of cut through, cut past. And I think the manga does it pretty well. Sometimes I think it goes too far, but I think it shows that a lot of it could be done. And ironically, though, they cut this part too. But I think you could do it well. What the manga also does is have that conversation Zex has with Noin is much shorter about the battlefield aesthetics, but also not with Noin, with Meisner, who's this random mechanic that once again is one of these what I would call an NPC that gets a name in this show. Again, kind of going back to that theme that will kind of be revealed a little later on. And yes, and then of course, as we see, this is sort of an episode I like to point to be like, that tall geese is massive. It is towering over that heavy arms as it's wailing on him with its beam sword.
I loved that. Seeing this, what looked like a man and a boy fighting.
Exactly. But an annoying thing in this show that a lot of the non-UC Gundam shows kind of mess up is beam sabers that don't kind of cut through things. The whole point why a beam saber was developed was to cut through mobile suit metal. It's, and as later on they begin to transform or get faster and smaller to avoid being hit by these laser things because their eye fields can stop normal attacks but can't stop beam weaponry. And here, Zex is just like beating on it like it's a regular, like a boffer, just like bam, 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 and the suit's just taking it and being in one piece. So I don't like that. There's not too much of that though, fortunately. Yes, and then lastly, Bob, this episode in the manga actually goes on a bit longer and compresses something that happens later on, a couple episodes later on, to sort of finish it off and tie it up. Yeah, it really truncates these things down, which sometimes I think gets rid of waste, but other times I think rushes to things a bit too much. Well,
you talk about this, bad case of the 90s, and I feel like one of the big things that the 90s did that has leaked on into the future for us is the desire to have big moments.
Yeah.
And I just feel like maybe we don't need every episode or 3 to have a big moment.
Yeah,
it helps with story, but it doesn't have to be bam, bam, bam.
Exactly. And and probably again a part of this, I'm not even sure, again, based on what my argument earlier was, I'm not even sure how much of this is a 90s thing and just like it had so much it had to do, it only had time for big moments. But like, I get in fights a lot with other iShield 21 fans because they like the manga more than the show. And I've read the manga only because it goes on further than the show. The show ends oddly abruptly.
Okay.
And I wanted to see how it all sort of shook out at the big tournament. But like reading the manga, which came out first, it feels a lot like this Gundam Wing manga where it's only like the highlights. And some would argue that the show kind of had to do filler. But of all the filler that iShield 21 anime has, only like a couple episodes stand out in my mind is like, we didn't need that. Where other ones' fillers are like exploring all these characters in these quieter moments and being like, oh, what's happening when they're not on the football field? What are these things that are they doing that lets us know about themselves? Oh, this linebacker actually has a dispute with his father. That's kind of interesting to explore. Like his father doesn't like him hanging out with his friends because he's like a salary man and his friends are like come from poor people families, but like only his friends accept him. So like like, I don't know. I see more of that, and you see this team build together a lot stronger, and it feels this team of 14 players feels a lot more fleshed out because you took that time. So like they don't feel like filler to me. They're more enjoyable experiences. The manga is great for reading through quickly and getting the cliff notes of it, but if you really want that full experience, I think the anime is the way to go. And so I would like quiet moments in this show, Bob. These quiet moments that Troa has, sort of sitting quietly with Wu Fei, I love. I love that you took the time to go there. I think that's a very important moment. I'm sad you cut that out in the manga. I love it. So, yeah.
I mean, I guess the thing of it is that there's a difference between time had on a screen and time had with a book. If you have too many pages in a comic or a manga where you're seeing just stillness, nowadays, we're more likely to do it. If you look at the major labels in American comics, they're more willing to have a full page or two of panels that have no text bubbles or anything occurring because you're supposed to be paying attention to the bodies on the page. It was not common in the 90s to do that, and it's considered a waste of valuable time and ink. So take that into consideration.
Yeah, unfortunate, but like that's sort of the advantage that a visual medium is the medium of time. Film is the medium of time. So if you can't take advantage of that, you lose. It's like trying to talk without verbs. It's so like don't handicap yourself there. So I do agree with you, Bob. And I like sort of seeing this portrait of Zex as a man who got to avenge his family and his kingdom, but now doesn't know what to do with his life. So he's fighting this useless battle, as everybody's calling it, with Hiro to prove that, he's worthy of living, or he is a worthy person, a fighter, or like anything. It just gives him a purpose to live. He's
seeking validation after achieving what he thought was his soul mission.
Yeah. So
where do I go from here?
Yeah.
That revenge was empty. What do I even do with my life now?
Yeah, and so now that's what we get to see Zex's journey get to be. Like, what is my second act at the age of, 21? Like, what do I do with my life now?
I would say open a cafe and start helping other kids achieve whatever that goal is for them.
Yeah.
That's what the Bob world of anime and video games says.
Sure. All right, do you have any other thoughts on this episode before we go to the way we go?
I do appreciate that we got to see Noin validate her love and admiration to Zex on screen and not have it be one of those will they, won't they off screen things. The 90s was rife with that, especially when you consider things like the X-Files or even in the early aughts, we had Full Metal Alchemist and having Risa Hawkeye with Roy Mustang. There were a lot of these. We're going to wait until the very last second to maybe acknowledge that these two should be a couple. I'm just glad that, okay, we know that Noin has feelings and we know that Zex is acknowledging those feelings, although not directly, so as to keep things professional.
Yeah. But I think there's also an element, like similarly to the way he thinks that he can't be the new Peacecraft monarch because he's such a tainted human being. Maybe he feels the same way, like I can't be in love with this woman because I'm such a trash person.
Oh yeah, no, that's 100% what's going on there.
So
I can't disagree with that. That's the man is suffering from this belief that he is not perfect, and the only thing that he was ever supposed to be was perfect, and so by eschewing any of that in favor of revenge and violence, how could I ever be worth loving? And I've seen so many people lose it on the battlefield. How could I do that to her or have her do that to me?
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, no, I mean, why don't we go the way we go?
Yeah, so, this is sort of something I noticed, and part of it might have been kind of exasperated by this movie I saw this week called Good Time by the Safdie brothers. It has the Twilight vampire in it. And Jennifer Jason Leigh for like 5 minutes. It came out in 2017. And it's the story of like this guy who he and his mentally handicapped brother rob a bank, and then his brother gets caught. So like he spends the whole movie doing all these terrible plans to get him broken out of jail and then a hospital and all these things. But what this movie really is a story about like how acts of love like are selfish or they hurt other people. And so like that's what you have to do to love somebody else. Somebody else, a different person a non-party has to get hurt in the process to do it. And so like that was an interesting take on that, because I feel like we see a lot in TVs, movies, Hollywood, this very easy, simple motivation of just like, oh, they're brothers, or oh, they're parents, or oh, they're childhood friends / lovers, and like all this kind of stuff as a way to like be like, okay, well, they're brothers, so I get why he's doing this. And so, you know, when Domon is having this hard time fighting his brother, I go like, I guess, but like you're sort of putting a lot of assumptions there. And just like my quibble with like wanting to see more Master Asia interactions before this show began, I want to see more. We get like a little bit of he and his brother, but like some of it might not even be that real anyway, because it's like a fake kind of flashback being forced on him. So like I would want to see a lot of like what these brothers were like beforehand, so I could feel Domon's reticence of like not wanting to hurt his own brother. And I wonder if like, am I just broken because of sort of where I came from, or like, or is it just weird that we're in an age now where people are, you know, breaking up with their families over things people write on Facebook now, and so like I'm just jaded in this age we live in. In the 90s, was it just like obvious that if he were your brother, you wouldn't want to kill him?
I'm willing to say that is to one degree or another a truth. Back in those times, we had a very strong belief that family and blood is thicker than water, and I think that was like a worldwide thing. And it's only, I would say, post-aughts, when we started having the internet age and the ability to communicate with more people outside of our direct circles, that we started to realize that's horseshit. No, that's not true. That's okay. So what is the real reason here then? You know?
Yeah. So just
does that make sense?
Yeah. Just for you young writers out there, and this isn't even a comment on G Gundam anymore. If you want to tell a story and you want to motivate a character and you want it to be about some sort of relationship, don't just assume that we're on board with it because you've labeled it sibling, parent, lover. Like that needs to be earned from us. I need to care about that relationship. I'm not just going to assume something anymore. The world's too complicated now.
We need a scene or 5 of what happens. And it doesn't have to be all before whatever actual inciting incident occurs. We need to see, oh, if they're brothers, let's have them go out for a couple of drinks and see which brother is the top dog and which one's the underdog, which, by the way, if you like theater, go and read the script for Top Dog, Underdog, or if you're lucky enough, see it on stage. It is a solid way to get a sense of how to read people in a relationship of this nature.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great play. So definitely worth a read.
Yeah. The way we go this way is I feel like having watched the 2 engineers on the catwalk over by the tall geese was one of the better moments of this series so far in trying to translate the difference between the pilots that we follow and the average everyday person. They, in trying to convince Zex to fix his left arm with the parts that this schmuck of a kid is passing on in order to be able to fight his way, Zex says, no, I'm not going to do that. I had a damaged arm then. I'm going to have a damaged arm now. And both of these engineers, the younger and the elder, look at him incredulously. And I mean, I guess we don't have the same pride as these folk do. And I think that is an interesting way to, in a simple handful of lines, explain why we are drawn to these types of characters. We are seeing the exceptions to the rule in that they are willing to do something that is not the obvious answer. They're basically writing in a way to say, yeah, these people are people. They're going to make dumb mistakes. And it's not just for the sake of cool, flashy show. It's because they have strong beliefs and desires.
All right. Very profound there, Bob. Now, are you ready for a trip to the nerd corner?
I think I am.
I have an odd nerd corner this week, Bob. I was, I told you about this weird mystery scarf I have received in the mail last spring.
Right? Yeah, you've told me about this several times.
Yeah, this very fancy, expensive brand name scarf that's like, I don't know, a couple $100, $600, $800, maybe more. That was mysteriously mailed to me from China by a person who is yet to claim authority over it. I don't know who or why they have sent me a scarf in Southern California, where it will probably not be very useful. I've received a few other random things in the mail recently, perhaps from the same person, perhaps not. This week I received a book, which is at least the most mundane of these gifts I've received. The book came with a letter that kind of explained it. It is called The Balcony of Fog, and I guess it comes with an app, the Too Far Media app. And if you read the book and it is hardcover book and play along with this app at the same time, you get there are cues to play certain music, cues to watch certain video. It's meant to be this early attempt at an interactive narrative literary experience. I haven't gotten it started yet, but if you're into kind of new ways to develop literature, to devour and consume literature, this way of pairing it with your iPhone might be an interesting approach. So you can look for A Balcony of Fog by Rich Shapiro, and this app, Too Far Media. The app is free. The book probably costs some money unless someone mysteriously mails it to you. What do you have for this week, Bobo?
As I said at the earlier part of this podcast, I'm going to use that slot to talk about the anguish that I feel about actor Jason David Frank.
Who is the Green Ranger in the American
Yes,
Power
who is
Rangers?
Tommy the Green Ranger, the White Ranger, the Red 5 Ranger from Zeo, the first of the two Red Turbos, and the Black Dino Thunder Ranger.
Oh, wow. So he just takes the tour in those shows. Is he the same character, or is it just
he is the
roles?
Same Tommy Oliver in all of those series.
Oh, crazy.
He has a continuous role from his debut during the 93 series, the Green Ranger saga, and continues through several seasons until he gets to Turbo. And then somewhere in the earlier part, maybe first half of that, I don't know if I missed an episode and never got around to seeing it. There was this transition of power between Tommy to this other kid, TJ, and a few other individuals that basically got rid of any of the leftover cast that was not the shitty little kid who ended up being the Blue Ranger for Turbo.
Okay, sure.
All right. But then he comes back for what was in the States an anniversary series, Dino Thunder, where he is now Dr. Tommy Oliver, a doctor of archaeology. And then in a special sometime back, not including the big Ranger War thing that they did, in a very poorly done adaptation of a couple of series that were actually really good. He also had an episode where he apparently gained something called a Master Morpher, which allowed him to change inexplicably between several of his forms. Because Tommy is best person in Saban world. But what I wanted to talk about was how this kid back in the day had been a pretty basic actor, and he was tapped on because he was also a capable enough martial artist. He was initially going to be in Saban's what was going to be called Cybertron, again, for this character Metalder from Japan that they were just going to do cut and edits for. The pilot didn't take, so he gave the option to be this Green Ranger to Jason David Frank as here's another opportunity because I really like what you can do, and also blah, blah, blah. So he gets that, and VR Troopers happens after the fact when Power Rangers becomes too big for any reason whatsoever. But as the series progressed, it kept falling on Jason David Frank to be the guy because they kept giving him the cool things that made him different. And for whatever reason, Americans thought, oh, he's got the shield and the cool dagger. He's got to be the leader. Oh, he's got the shield and the talking dagger. He's got to be the leader. So on and so on.
The dagger talks.
What?
The dagger talks.
Well, his saber, which they decided to name Saba, for the White Ranger, it was a talking saber that would talk on his behalf in some cases. Don't ask me why, but it was a good toy for them. Fun fact, though, the White Ranger was in Japan a kid that got suited up into a larger size when he transformed and used that talking saber to act as his voice, so no one knew it was a kid in the suit for a handful of episodes before he eventually let it out.
Like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone 2.
Like that, or like a reverse version of Bruno the Kid, if anybody remembers that 1990s animation monstrosity that starred Bruce Willis.
The UPN show?
Well, now you can go and look it up. Anyway, time goes on, and Jason David Frank develops a karate service. He eventually opens up his own dojo in Texas, which he calls the Red Star Gym, because the last form that he had taken before leaving, that wasn't the turbo one, was the 5-star character, 5-pointed star character from Power Ranger Zeo. So he just ran with that. And then Power Rangers started becoming popular on Facebook or whatever. And because of that, they decided, oh, okay, well, look at me. I'm still the actor. I'm still doing things. You can pay a premium to come and see me at my dojo. You can pay for a membership to come to my dojo. You can pay to get merch signed by me at inexorbitant prices on eBay. And he got full of himself, and he started doing a bunch of these convention scene things. And he was notorious for not wanting to do signings and showings with the other cast members from the original Mighty Morphin, most specifically Austin St. John, whose name was Jason, for those who want to get confused here, by Jason David Frank. So Tommy and Jason, outside of their suits, didn't like each other. But as Jason David Frank continued to talk shit, he started to lose some favor, and he thought he was going to become an MMA fighter. And he kept challenging people and getting his ass handed to him in the octagon, till eventually he stopped promoting himself as an MMA fighter and came back to just being a regular recurring character on Power Rangers and wherever Power Rangers media would allow him to be.
Okay, so his career has mostly just been being known for being in Power Rangers and trying to eke out
there's
some
also
money on that.
There's also a film called The Order, and The Order was a kickstarted film or Indiegogo film that starred a lot of the actors from the earliest years of Mighty Morphin. He was the lead, and it was supposed to be his return to form as an actor and not just fight actor. He was supposed to be an action acting person. And a lot of people in the community stateside will use a scene of him going, "They took everything from me," as a sort of video meme when they do things. So it's just, it frustrates me when people talk about, "Oh man, Tommy's so great." Saban has gone to the Mighty Morphin well.
Is that a common thing that you come across, people talking about how great Tommy is?
Whenever people from our rough age group talk about Power Rangers, 9 times out of 10, they will say how awesome the Green Ranger was, that was their favorite, if they were a layman or otherwise, and how much they thought he was a badass.
Sure.
Even though his like signature attack whenever they would do shots of him outside of the suit for fights is his wide-legged kick, where he would use both of his feet on 2 different opponents, which has been cited in some videos that mock it with those like dub-overs as ass attack.
Okay.
Because he lifts his legs so high for the shot that you get a very clear shot of his ass as it comes down to the camera. The guy was, and will continue to be until he shows me otherwise, a joke. And he will probably, if ever this becomes something that builds up, want to kick my ass. I'll understand. I'm not a fighter. I would not. But he should not be separated from critique when the actions that he's taken have detrimented other people who want to enjoy the series, whether it be the American or the Japanese, and insist that his might and glory is without dirt, without grime, without sin. It's all good. He is the almighty Tommy, the umpteenth color ranger.
All right. Well, so Tommy, if you're listening out there and you want, I don't know, how do you respond to Bob calling you a punk ass bitch? We look.
Well, I haven't used those words yet, but if I need to,
it's
Jason David Frank, just clean up your act, man. Do not be a punk ass bitch.
Strong words, Tommy. Better listen to him.
God damn it. Now that I've gone off the deep end and fallen into the entire mountain of soapboxes, do we want you to do your plugs first this time? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, just plug us up, Bob. We're here at the end.
Well, Skeyhill, I don't know whether or not you want to use that phrasing there. I feel like this is like R-ish, but let's not get into X territory, shall we?
Is this a sexual thing?
No. I want you to keep this in, but you said plug us up, Bob.
I get it. Okay, well, go on.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, yes, you can find me as Bob Scary VOA across the internet. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram. Hopefully, I'll get back around to Coffee and Patreon, as well as my personal website, bobscaryvoa.com, where you can listen to my demos for my character, commercial promotion, and narration voice reads. And if you need me to do any kind of read, any kind at all, please feel free to contact me by way of that, the previous mentioned things, or you can find me on voices.com, Casting Call Club, and many other places. Please, for the love of all that is good in this world, hire me.
Yes, thanks to Bob Scary for joining us this week, as he will each and every week of this season. Let us, of course, thank Lev Van Rensselaer, being the audio maven that you are craven. And I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill. You can find my features, documentaries, short films, animations, video essays, behind-the-scenes footage, and so much more at quixoticunited.com. And you can find, probably some sort of social media under a very similar name. Thank you all for listening. Bob, tell the audience how many jumping jacks you can do in 20 hours.